felt like I was kind of losing myself. F you.
He's one of the most popular wrestlers of the 21st century. Hardly anyone has such a connection with the fans, but behind his sparkling charisma, Jeff Hardy has a dark penchant. He has drug problems. Serious drug problems.
Jeff was in a bad way that day.
I was just out of my mind. I was like a damn zombie.
And you could see Jeff there. He's wavering. He's like smoke going up.
And I saw people literally helping Jeff into the backstage area.
He was in no condition to have a match.
I was abusing pain medication.
I went out there f***ed up.
When I actually go back and watch that footage now, it just makes me sick.
Time and again, he seeks professional help. Time and again, he relapses. Jeff Hardy drives drunk, gets arrested, puts opponents in the ring in danger of their lives, is then shocked by his own negligence, but can't seem to stop. A risk for himself, but also for others.
I was being a very selfish person.
Highway Patrol arrested 44-year-old Jeff Hardy.
Jeff Hardy of Cameron, North Carolina, has been charged with DUI.
The third DUI for Jeff Hardy in 4 years.
Why are you doing this? Why are you purposely valuing getting high over your career?
Jeff Hardy's drug problems are worse than many think. In this documentary, we look at disturbing, sometimes rather unknown incidents and pose the question of how he can finally escape from this destructive cycle.
You're starting to make your brother sound like the sober one.
Jail, man, was, scared the living hell out of me.
In 1994, Jeff Hardy makes his WWE debut. He's 17 years old and considered an extraordinary talent. 4 years later, Jeff and his brother Matt signed long-term contracts and shaped the Attitude Era with daring stunts and groundbreaking in-ring action. Jeff Hardy practically grows up in the wrestling business, complete with all the dark sides, which were much darker back then. Drugs, alcohol, and steroid abuse. All were relatively normal in wrestling locker rooms in the 90s. In this environment, Jeff Hardy learns about the world of wrestling. It shapes him to see how veterans and his role models take painkillers after fights just to cope, how they drown their stress at the hotel bar with alcohol, how they inject anabolic steroids in the hopes of winning more titles with more muscles. Jeff hadn't come into contact with drugs at all during his childhood and youth. But his lifestyle changed from the age of 22, as he himself tells in an interview.
I never drank in high school. That was my invincible power until we got on the road, and that's when we naturally just started kind of experimenting.
Around 22, I started getting crazy, man.
I got carried away with it.
Jeff is actually a very quiet, almost shy person. He says he got that from his mother, whom unfortunately he never managed to build a deep relationship with. When Jeff was 9, she passed away from cancer. Actually, Jeff doesn't mind being shy, but backstage, drugs help him open up. A big reason for him to pop pills.
Did you like the high?
I think so, and I think it's just that whole, more sociable when I'm high, I guess. Yeah, I'm a very quiet person, always have been, but I think that's probably the main reason, just around crowds and stuff. It just made me more open and want to talk more.
In 2003, his penchant for drugs gets him into trouble publicly for the first time. WWE fires Jeff for drug abuse, unprofessional behavior, refusal of rehabilitation therapy, declining performance in the ring, as well as constant tardiness and repeated failure to show up for shows. In his circle of friends, Jeff tends to play down these accusations. He's fed up with wrestling, completely demotivated. The WWE's stressful touring schedule has finally gotten to him. He seeks a new challenge at TNA, another wrestling promotion, but even there, he is unreliable. At one show, he was supposed to intervene in a segment and save the fan favorites. But when his cue came, nobody could find him. The wrestlers in the segment waited anxiously, telling the crew to send Jeff, but nobody knew where he was. 5 minutes after his planned appearance, Agent Dutch Mantell finds him in his car, visibly intoxicated.
And I beat on his window, and he said, yeah, man. He didn't even know where he was or what he was supposed to do. This was like 5 minutes after he was supposed to be there.
After repeated suspensions, the collaboration between TNA and Jeff Hardy falls apart. But Jeff loves wrestling too much to quit. It's the hot summer of the FIFA World Cup in 2006. After a fascinating World Cup, the sports scene calms down. During the summer slump, sports journalists don't quite know what to report on. That's where Jeff Hardy's WWE return comes in. Jeff is thrilled about his comeback. He enjoys exchanging stories with old companions behind the curtain, but the backstage atmosphere has changed. WWE has introduced the new wellness policy, a drug control program with guidelines to ensure the wrestler's health. The regular drug tests are a thorn in Jeff's side. It doesn't even take a year for Jeff's first violation. The punishment is a 30-day suspension. Another few months later, Hardy fails another drug test. The penalty is now a 60-day suspension. And then follows a tragic incident. March 14th, 2008. Just 3 days after Hardy's suspension, Jeff Hardy's house in Cameron, North Carolina burns down. His dog dies trapped inside. The Moore County Fire Department states that the cause of the fire is unclear. The police suspect foul play or arson, but there was no real investigation. Jeff didn't have much interest in it, but his house was not insured, and now he has to cope with another setback. The WWE creative team later incorporates Jeff's dog's death into a storyline. For some, it's too macabre, as are CM Punk's remarks about Jeff Hardy's drug problems in their heated feud. Jeff later says in interviews that he didn't have a problem with it. It was just a storyline. But Punk's remarks rub salt into a wound that is real.
You know a thing or two about prescription medication. What I don't think you realize is that you have to go to a doctor to legally obtain some. Why don't you try living a clean lifestyle?
That's the professional level. A TV storyline with real elements. Jeff Hardy always says in interviews that he wouldn't have had a problem with it. However, later, a private video from a restaurant surfaces showing how hostile Jeff Hardy and CM Punk really are. Jeff Hardy, clearly under the influence of drugs, can be seen speaking disparagingly about Punk.
CM Punk, I think you're a nerd. You, my friend, are way too cocky, inside and outside the ring.
On September 1, 2009, Jeff Hardy's contract with WWE expires. Just 10 days later, he is arrested. On this September 11th, law enforcement officers surprise Hardy at his house in North Carolina. In the early hours of the morning, the door bursts open. A SWAT unit rushes in, shouting. Naturally, Jeff offers no resistance, but only later finds out that it's a drug raid. The sheer quantities found reveal just how badly Jeff needed that option to take his pain away.
I started getting, carried away with abuse, pills.
And that was because of the pain, because of what you guys were putting your bodies through.
Yeah, and then you just start taking pills for pain, and then that leads to, you want to take them to feel good, and then that leads to like an everyday kind of habit. I got arrested for actually trafficking because I was taking so many. If I would take like 8 or 12 at one time to the point of throwing up, and I was like, what am I doing to myself? Oh my God, but I kept doing it until I got arrested. He could have very well saved my life.
Anabolic steroids are also confiscated. Hardy is charged with possession of Schedule III controlled substances with the intent to distribute at the felony level. Jeff Hardy finds himself in a cell, a terrible feeling and another low point in his life. Normally, Jeff Hardy tries to avoid terrible feelings, to escape them, but he can't do that in this cell. He can't emotionally numb himself with the glass of water in front of him, and the cold bars remind him constantly of his poor decisions.
It was crazy, sitting in a jail cell going, what the fuck, oh my God, my life's over.
I was scared as hell.
But Hardy is lucky. There is a way to escape after all. By posting bail of $125,000, he is set free. For now. The verdict in court still needs to be pronounced. A nightmare for Jeff. What if he really does have to go to prison? The charges against him are serious. A fear creeps into him that wouldn't leave him for the coming months and years. The fear of being locked up, of not being able to escape and run away from negative feelings anymore. What does Jeff do with this fear? He runs away from it. He numbs it with whiskey. At this time, it is clear that he is stuck in a vicious cycle. Jeff takes drugs, which leads to consequences, and out of fear of the consequences, Jeff takes more drugs. March 13th, 2011, perhaps the worst date in Jeff Hardy's professional career, a pay-per-view day at TNA. Jeff walks slowly through the backstage area. There's a list on the wall, the match card for tonight. He reads his name next to that of his wrestling idol, Jeff Hardy versus Sting, 20 minutes of match time. Jeff is looking forward to it. But the pain in his back and the fear of a prison sentence overshadow every bit of excitement. That's why Jeff starts drinking early in the day and takes soma pills for pain.
I had to wrestle Sting, one of my all-time favorite wrestlers.
That thing with Sting, I was a damn zombie.
Sting, on the other hand, is highly focused on his big match.
Well, I'm pretty excited about it because I'm literally going to wrestle Jeff Hardy. And I thought, let's go out there and tear it up and have a great match. And it was hard finding him that day. And then when I did find him, you could tell something was off.
He was deteriorating as the hours went on, more and more as the day went on.
The fans are oblivious. They're just hyped for the match. Some got their ticket and traveled hundreds of miles just for this match. When Jeff Hardy's music plays, the crowd goes wild. But he doesn't come out for 45 seconds. Executive producer Eric Bischoff later reports what's happening behind the scenes.
Hardy's music played and there's no Jeff. Hardy's music playing, there's still no Jeff. And at that point, I started to get a little bit concerned. And I remember looking over to my left and I saw people literally helping Jeff into the backstage area.
As the backstage staff leads Jeff through the curtain, it doesn't take long for the fans to notice. Jeff is acting strange.
He was in no condition to have a match.
And you could see Jeff there. He's wavering. He's like smoke going up.
Jeff's vacant stare raises concerns, especially for producer Eric Bischoff.
Slight change in plans.
He enters the ring and instructs both to finish the match quickly. After a quick, unspectacular, and utterly disappointing match, the audience chants, "Bullshit." Sting agrees. Backstage, AJ Styles is furious, just waiting for Hardy to step back behind the curtain. At this point, Styles is one of the biggest stars at TNA and advocates for the professionalization of the product.
AJ Styles was there and
it was embarrassing. He was embarrassed.
For me, it was sadness and disappointment.
He was doing more damage than what he was doing good.
Looking back, Hardy hated himself for the incident. He developed mental health issues due to immense self-doubt.
When I actually go back and watch that footage now, it just makes me sick.
I'd messed up, like big time, and that I couldn't live my life like this. Like I knew I had a problem.
Later on, Jeff Hardy speaks highly of Sting, calling him the best and acknowledging his significant help. Despite Sting's extreme disappointment, he didn't blame Jeff, knowing that Jeff would blame himself more than enough.
I wasn't even mad at him. I was disappointed, yeah. I mean, everybody was disappointed.
I don't harbor anything against him, and I wish him all the best.
The only silver lining to the incident was that it shocked Jeff awake.
It was such an apparent sign that he needed help, that it needed to be addressed, and he got help.
Jeff Hardy wanted to turn his life around and kick pills for good. He managed to stave off his addictions for a while. Back at TNA, he apologized to the whole crew. 3 weeks later, Jeff had his court appearance. His demeanor showed tension anxiety. The fear of imprisonment had haunted him for exactly 2 years, countless sleepless nights, and a faint hope for a lenient sentence. Jeff pleaded guilty on all charges. He confessed to drug possession, consumption, and even trafficking. When the judge delivered the verdict, Jeff hoped desperately to avoid prison time. He was sentenced to 10 days in jail, 30 months of probation, a $100,000 fine, and he had to attend an outpatient drug rehabilitation program. The following years were the most stable in Jeff Hardy's life. He aimed to prove to his wrestling peers that he had learned to live without substances. Also, he would have been judged harshly if TNA officials caught him with a whiskey bottle. Although still dependent on his highs, Jeff found them elsewhere, like in daring wrestling spots or motocross stunts. But in 2015, he relapsed. On April 29th, a beautiful spring day, Jeff took a big leap, enjoying the adrenaline rush. However, the landing sent him into another downward spiral. Jeff broke his leg. While such an injury might be a minor setback for most people, for Jeff Hardy, it meant months without access to his highs, at least not through wrestling or motocross. Constricted in his movement and his freedom to control his emotions, it didn't take long for Jeff to fall back into the gaping maws of drug abuse and addiction. On March 1st, 2017, TNA released Jeff Hardy. It became clear that the Hardy Boys had big plans for a WrestleMania appearance. On April 1st, the Hardys secretly signed a WWE contract. The next day, they celebrated their grand comeback at WrestleMania 33. Fans were ecstatic. This could be the biggest high in Jeff's career. In a documentary about their comeback, Jeff and Matt claim to have turned their backs on drugs. The birth of their children had a profound impact on them. Jeff went even further. When Jeff Hardy discussed his comeback with Triple H, he promised that he wouldn't take drugs anymore and that he would never be arrested again. Jeff never made those promises lightly. Every time he said he would get better, he meant it.
I'm really ready to take my career super serious, and I'm done with that. I'm never getting arrested again.
The sad part is, he never managed to keep those promises. March 12th, 2018. Almost a year had passed since the Grand WrestleMania comeback. Jeff Hardy was driving drunk along this road on a Saturday evening. He veered off the road and crashed into the guardrail. His new Cadillac spun out and came to a stop in the right lane. $13,000 in damages. When the police arrived at the scene, they encountered an irritated Jeff Hardy, who already knew what was coming. The breathalyzer test. The results showed 2.5 per mil. In North Carolina, the limit is 0.8, which is higher than in most other states, but nowhere near enough for Jeff Hardy to keep his driver's license. For 1 year, his license was suspended, and he also had to do community service and undergo alcohol therapy. On July 13th, the farce continued. The police found Jeff Hardy unconscious in a public stairwell, reeking of alcohol. Shortly afterward, the officers uncovered another unpleasant incident. Jeff caught the police's attention when he drove to a liquor store and sat in the car with the purchased alcoholic beverages. Witnessing traffic violations, the police stopped him. Jeff had had 2 glasses of vodka and admitted this. Even more noticeable, however, was Jeff's bloody nose. Detectives discovered that it stemmed from a fight between Jeff and his wife that evening. Jeff had obviously drowned his marital frustrations in alcohol. WWE officials viewed such scandals with suspicion. and Jeff's brother Matt Hardy feared for his position since he was directly associated with Jeff. An argument ensued. Matt and Jeff were able to resolve it quickly, as they always did, but Matt's wife, Rebby, lashed out on Twitter. Jeff's wife should help her husband get his life together and prevent him from driving in an impaired state on roads where she travels with her children. She said Jeff was about to kill himself, or maybe someone else. For WWE officials around Vince McMahon and Triple H, it was clear that Jeff couldn't afford another scandal. He was on thin ice, and if he behaved unprofessionally again and caused any negative headlines at all, he would be out. Jeff made it through 2 years in this precarious state. He passed the drug tests and got his life in order until December 4th, 2021. WWE was in Edinburgh, Texas on that evening, 10 years after Jeff Hardy's drug scandal in the match against Sting. The evening had the potential to end just like back then. Hardy's entrance music played. The audience cheered, with some longtime Jeff Hardy fans in attendance, eager to see him live. When Jeff came out, he seemed slow, cautious, and intoxicated, as if he were looking for something to hold onto, walking to the ring. Jeff tried to hide it, but by the time he was tagged into the match by partner Drew McIntyre, there was no doubt. Jeff Hardy was once again wrestling under the influence. There are various theories about this evening. Some say it was alcohol, others talk about even harder drugs. Rumors suggest Jeff also took painkillers to cope with his leg injury. You could see him limping during the entrance. What exactly Jeff took that evening, only he knows. But one thing is clear, he wasn't in his right mind. The other wrestlers noticed too. As Xavier Woods was on Hardy's team, he asked him if everything was okay. Even the opposing team, the Bloodline, showed concern. 10 years ago, Jeff was in a similar situation against Sting, intoxicated in the ring. He knows what a huge scandal it was back then. One of the major accusations against him was that he endangered not only himself, but the wrestlers he was working with.
I mean, the bottom line is, I give my opponent my body and vice versa. And, there's a lot of trust.
Wrestling is highly complex and requires absolute concentration. Accidents happen in the ring, even when sober, so-called botches, where wrestlers can get seriously injured. Of course, it's absolutely irresponsible to step into the ring influenced by alcohol or drugs, a no-go that common sense forbids, and professionalism too. Jeff knows this. The last thing he wants is to endanger his colleagues, but now he's back in the spotlight, on the ring mat, with tunnel vision. Everything goes blurry. Over 5,000 eager fans have their eyes fixed on him, eyes that he can only disappoint. He knows he has to get out. To the surprise of the fans and wrestlers in the ring, Jeff leaves the arena. Another bitter evening in Jeff Hardy's life. He's one of the most popular wrestlers, but his dark side persists over years and decades. Even backstage staff and officials are at a loss. They know about Jeff's drug problems and want to handle him as empathetically as possible and help him. The doctors conduct a drug test. Brother Matt Hardy later said that it came back negative. However, there are contradictory reports about it. WWE sends Jeff off to his hotel that evening, scheduled to go home the next day. WWE continues the tour without him. About a week later, the talent relations managers make Jeff an offer. They want to help him and would pay for the entire treatment at a renowned rehab clinic. When Jeff hears about this offer, he smiles wanly. He has tried so many times already. It wouldn't be his first rehab stint, and probably not his last. He declines. On December 9th, WWE releases Jeff Hardy. After nearly 5 years, Jeff Hardy's third run with the WWE comes to an abrupt end. It started with the breathtaking comeback at WrestleMania 33, but there's nothing left of that radiance and adrenaline now. Jeff is left with a mix of shame, disappointment, and frustration. Colleagues express themselves on social media, trying to lift Jeff up. Bailey writes, "Jeff, you gave me so much hope for my wrestling dream when I was 12 years old. We love you. You are so special, and I wish you nothing but the absolute best." Cedric Alexander and Ricochet post similar statements. Jeff is incredibly popular and beloved backstage. That's why it's so baffling that there are these reckless and thoughtless incidents due to drug use just over and over again. The drugs bring out a side of him that he hates, the unempathetic, loveless side, the side of him that drives drunk, that wrestles while intoxicated, the side of him that will not only destroy Jeff Hardy, but put others in danger too. In March of 2022, Jeff Hardy joins WWE competitor AEW, where his brother Matt is also under contract. But the same problems that haunted him at TNA and WWE are the problems that haunt him in AEW. He lasts about 2 months in the company without incident. Then, on a Sunday night, Jeff sings some of his songs in a bar. He loves making music. This video emerges with a statement that casts its shadow ahead.
"Whiskey is my best friend and my worst enemy."
After this recording, Hardy gets heavily drunk and parties all night. The scandal follows in the early hours of the morning. The police receive alarming calls from the highway. Upset drivers report a lunatic on the streets. Some see a man drinking at the wheel. It's Jeff Hardy, once again driving drunk. A video shows alarmed officers stopping and confronting him. With guns drawn, Jeff looks like a hardened criminal. The Wrestling Observer reports that Jeff won't be allowed to drive for 10 years. After that, he must use an interlock device for 2 years, a system that allows the car to start only when a breathalyzer test is passed. At WWE, Jeff was in deep trouble, and even in the long run, no matter how many chances he got, he just couldn't kick his addictions. Now, Jeff was also in deep legal trouble. The judge made it very clear that his next sentence would be severe and that prison time was guaranteed if Jeff didn't finally defeat his demons. But from the outside, it's so easy to judge. Addiction seems so easily overcome, but it's not. Often those who never had to wrestle with an addiction themselves can't understand how hard it is. The one question fans ask is, can Jeff ever defeat his demons? Over the past 20 years, Jeff has relapsed time and time again. Maybe he needs distance from wrestling? Some claim that Jeff Hardy's recovery is only possible if he steps away for good. After all, wrestling brought him into this mess. Others disagree, saying that Jeff consumed a lot of drugs, especially during times away from wrestling, because he missed the way it made him feel. Now, at last, as ever, Jeff Hardy is at a crossroads. Today and tomorrow, he has to make a choice that will forever decide the course of his life. Can he stay clean, or will he keep repeating the same cycle that will ultimately destroy him and land him in a prison cell? Jeff Hardy has the Chinese symbols for peace and health tattooed on his arm. Let's hope that he finds both.